Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is, as always, Melvid. Today I'm bringing you a powerful damage over time build with absolutely absurd clear. It even has pretty good single target damage while remaining fairly safe. And we're super tanky with both Reperform and just an absolute metric ton of leech. So, we'll get into the build. If you like this build, please remember to like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitch, all that fun stuff. But let's talk about skills. The first skill we're going to talk about is Spirit Plague. This is our main DPS skill, provides the most value, most bang for our buck. We're going to be casting this often because you get stacks whenever you cast it that increase your damage over time and your poison damage. For most smaller packs, this is a one and done where you just cast it and then you just run past the pack. It's going to kill everything there. Whenever we're skilling this up, we're going to go for Plague Penetration first because that just deals the most DPS to the most monsters at once. And then we're going to go with Poison Stacks on cast for our single target. We're going to also grab increased cast speed and duration, and then we're going to make our way over to the spell damage per intelligence node. We're going to round off the skill points by maxing out the damage over time buff stacks and then the poison damage buff stacks in that order. Our second skill is Aura of Decay. This is kind of a utility skill, kind of a damage skill, where it's mostly there to provide us some protection against getting swarmed and also increases our damage just a little bit. While we're skilling this up, we're going to immediately go for the heal per missing health and the less poison damage taken, and you absolutely need the full points in this. It's about 8 points before you start using this skill with any amount of regularity, because otherwise this will absolutely kill you. But once you get those done, then it's perfectly usable. So once we grab those, we're going to pick up poison resistance while active, and then increased ailment frequency. Go the poison resist first for both increased survivability while you're using this, and then because the increased ailment frequency does also affect the poisons that it applies to you. And then we're going to round this off with the minus to enemy poison res while they're in the area of effect, and the poison bolt, and then whatever points we have left over are in the poison bolt frequency, just to really up our poison stacks that we get out of this. Our third skill is Drain Life. This is kind of a get out of jail free card, so long as we're at least the tiniest bit proactive. This just is an absolutely massive amount of leech while also dealing a fair bit of damage. So if you have any kind of high health or hard hitting monster, just stick it on them before getting in melee range, just to make sure that your health just always stays super topped up. Primarily for this, we're getting the Dark Shackles node, so then that way we don't have to channel it. You just cast it on the ground and then you're good to go and can do whatever else. After you have Dark Shackles, pretty much max out the rest of your leech nodes other than the increased leech rate, and then finish with the damned, damage per damned, and the damned duration, just to really synergize more with the damage over time that we deal. Our fourth skill is Reperform, and this is actually where we get a lot of our tankiness with, since it essentially provides us a second health bar, including any endurance that we may have. So this is a super important skill to both get as soon as you have access to it, as well as constantly keep up whenever you can. Leech generally does a good job with this, but just keep moving, use Reap when you have to, just to make sure that we stay in it, because it is a fairly long cooldown if we're knocked out of it for whatever reason. For this skill, we're going to immediately go for the less health drain node, and plus it gives us some extra bonus damage over time, so that's nice. And then we're going to go with the increased leech while you're transformed, again, just to make sure that we stay topped up at all times. We're going to travel to Poison with Reap, and then the poison duration while transformed, and then travel to the health gain per kill, just again to make sure that we stay topped up while we're in Reperform. And then from there, your final points are kind of a toss-up between Reap cooldown or the necrotic damage flat necrotic damage you get while transformed. It's totally up to you. Do whatever feels nice. If you like the travel of Reap, then go for the cooldown. If you just want to bump up your damage of Spirit Plague a little bit, and your other dots as well, then go for the flat necrotic damage. Our final skill, to the surprise of hopefully no one, is another damage over time spell. In this instance, it's Wandering Spirits. Provides just another little bit of kind of mindless AoE DPS that you cast and then just let it do its thing until the cooldown runs down, and then you cast it again. For this skill, we're going to grab increased cooldown and damage chance per second, and then the reveal duration plus and the additional cooldown is also really nice, because with the cooldown recovery we get from the other node, then we actually increase the uptime of Wandering Spirits, even though we are also increasing its cooldown. I like the Spirit move speed and damage, just because that kind of maximizes their DPS, since we are moving a lot and it is going to stay with us. And then finally, I like to put 1 point in the area and size increase, just to try and maximize the DPS as much as possible without putting too many points into it. For our passives, they're pretty straightforward. We're focusing on survival to an extent, but then also increasing our damage as much as possible. So for Acolyte, we're going with Intelligence, Vitality, and then the health regen and the reduced health drain as well, just to increase our survivability both in Reperform and from some of the nodes we're going to take in the Lich tree. Additionally, if you have some extra points that you don't really know what to do with, the armor in this tree is a pretty nice choice, just to make sure we're taking less damage from hits. In the Lich tree, we are going to go for health and spell leech, the damage over time, poison damage and duration, vitality, increased damage with current health drain, intelligence with reduced health regen. Again, this is why those two nodes are why we took the health regen and reduced health drain in the Acolyte tree. Poison and necrotic penetration is super important. It is basically a more multiplier for our damage. Flat spell damage increases both Spirit Plague, Wandering Spirits, and Drain Life damage by a pretty significant amount. Increased damage over time, as well as the Leech, are our two high tier nodes. And then we are going to grab a couple of points into the reduced health drain node, again, just to make sure that the increased damage and intelligence nodes aren't straight up killing us. In terms of itemization, there are two items that I feel are really important for this build and kind of core. The first is Rotmind. This is an offhand catalyst, unique. It's amazing for us, provides a ton of utility. Not necessarily utility, but a ton of damage and some utility. For instance, it provides flat poison damage for our dot spells, gives them an additional level, gives us some poison leech, gives us less damage over time taken, so then that way our poisons deal even less damage to us, as well as some area for our dot spells. The second item that I think is really important for us to have is Woven Flesh. You get this pretty commonly from the very first monolith. This provides some percent health, which is nice, but importantly, it magnifies our leech by just an absurd amount with the increased leech rate and the increased damage leech to health as health. It just massively increases our leech, which is where a good portion of our ability to survive comes from. And then as a bonus, it just flat gives you 100% critical avoidance. So then we don't have to worry about critical avoidance on any other piece of gear, which is super nice. As a side note, and I'm not going to put this image in the video, Transient Rest are the boots that I'm using, and they're pretty nice. They give us a little bit of ward based on your current mana, as well as bump up a good portion of resists by 35, and then just a ton of move speed. So if you've got them, these are good to use, unless you have something better. These are totally unnecessary. These are just something that I've been toying with that I actually quite enjoy. Generally, however, for our items, in terms of damage, we want to go with damage over time over anything else. And then after that, poison damage, because we do primarily deal poison damage rather than necrotic damage. Those are really the only two that you should really bother with at all in terms of like potential damage nodes. Other than that, we want to go pure defense. Since we are experiencing a constant drain with our Aura of Decay and then the nodes we took in the Lich tree, so defense is super important. Go for health, go for resists, make sure your resists are maxed as always, and in particular with this build, make sure your poison resist is about 20 to 30 overcapped, just so then that way your own poison stacks that you apply to yourself aren't interfering with your poison resist at all. Endurance is also really strong. I'm a huge fan of endurance in general and endurance threshold, but particularly with this, where since Reperform is its own entire health pool, it also has its own endurance, which just increases the amount of damage that you can take by a significant portion if you scale endurance and endurance threshold. I'm sorry about the noise. My cat just rubbed up against the mic. In general, I think that this is a really good build. It should take you pretty far into corruption or whatever you're doing, because it is so survivable. It is so tanky. You have so much leech. It makes it really easy to survive nearly everything, and you even have some good mobility with reap and cooldown the reap cooldown if you go that route. My one kind of criticism of this build, the one thing that I could see people not liking, is that it doesn't really, you don't have a lot of like visceral feedback to how much damage you deal. You just kind of have to eyeball everything, and you do eventually get a sense of it, but you don't feel it like you can sometimes with some other builds. So if you don't enjoy a damage over time playstyle, you're probably not going to enjoy this build at all. If you really like damage over time playstyles, then you're going to fall in love with this build, and this might be your favorite build, period. But that's it for the video today. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you liked the build guide. If you try it, let me know in the comments down below. I'm also on Twitch. I try and stream every weekday starting at about 12 EST until 6 or so typically. I may have to leave a little bit earlier on a couple of days. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.